throttle on spending before going on break. Take a look at this. The Senate scrambling this weekend to pass a nearly $1 trillion health care bill by Christmas. Add on this week's $1 trillion plus spending bill the president just signed, plus the House's new $154 billion jobs bill. That is over $2 trillion. Democrats say it'll pull this economy right out of the recession, but will it? Hello, everybody. I'm Cheryl Casoni, and welcome to Cashin' In. Our Cashin' In crew this week: Wayne Rogers, Jonathan Hoenig, Jonas Max Ferris, along with Tracy Burns and John Layfield. And joining us this week from Op-Ed News is Steve Laser. So welcome to everybody. Well, John, this binge spending, what does this do to the economy next year?
Look, this is horrible for the economy. These guys are completely out of control. They're like a fat guy in a pizza factory. They are so happy they've got these unlimited purse strings. Don't forget, $1 trillion from the Fed that is accounting for 75% of the securitization market. If it wasn't for the government, there would be no housing market whatsoever. You talk about credit contracting, $1.5 trillion in credit lines have already been contracted. Once the Fed pulls that trigger, you're going to see more go out the window as well. And don't forget this health care bill, 2,000 plus pages. No one has read it. Over the next 10 years, $33 trillion of the economy is going to be regulated by this one bill, and nobody has read it, and they want to vote on it by Christmas Eve. These guys are out of control.
Steve, poll after poll shows us that the American people are very fed up with all the spending in D.C., and it continues.
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing that's left to do with this economy is jobs. We need more jobs. We have the GDP increasing. We have productivity up. We have the amount of hours worked. The one thing that hasn't coming along fast enough is jobs. That's what has to happen. That's why Congress is passing this $154
but Steve, with all due respect, that should have been what happened first. That should have been the only thing that this Congress tackled when they came in, when this president came into office. Jobs. That was what he should have been focused on, but he wasn't. His head was in 4 different places, between healthcare, cap and trade, now in Copenhagen doing God knows what. That is failing miserably by the second. What happens now? We spend money and we get nothing out of it, and we still don't have jobs.
Steve,
he was focused on jobs.
Go ahead.
That's what the $787 billion stimulus was about. If we hadn't passed that, we would have been looking at a total collapse of the economy. That's what we were all talking about a year ago at this time. That's why we have the job market stabilizing right now.
Right, of course, because government spending creates wealth, right, Steve? I mean, that's the whole philosophy of the Obama administration. The more the government spends, the more wealth is created. I got to tell you, Cheryl, if I invested the way that this government spends, midnight on a Saturday night, sign it, $1 trillion out the door, they would throw me in jail. What the government specializes in isn't the creation of wealth, it's the transfer of wealth.
Jonathan, you're going to be going to jail. You're going to go to jail for lots of other reasons, Jonathan. It has nothing to do.
Yeah, of course.
Trust me.
Actually, if you
bring in Jonas into this, because again, back to the economy.
If you did with your money what the government did, you would have bought a lot of bank stocks, which is what they did, and made a lot of money actually this year. In fact, the government spending so far has saved the banking industry, as we know, which was going down in flames. Let's not forget that. It already bought us out of a recession. We're out of a recession, and it's because of government spending. That's what happened. Okay, the housing market stopped plummeting because of government spending, creating a securitization market where there is none. Now, can they buy us jobs as well? That's going to be tricky. It hasn't worked so far. This spending will have to be paid for and will hurt the economy in the future, but not next year. It's not going to hurt us next year. It's going to hurt us in 2015.
Yeah, but
wait, guys, hold on a second. But I want to go to that housing point that Jonas just made over to Wayne, because he's saying that the housing picture is getting better. A lot of economists saying not so fast on housing in particular, Wayne.
I think that's true. I don't think the housing market is going to jump out at us like he says. I tell you, the biggest problem with all this, when you say that the government spending is this and then the other, you got to remember something. These are people who hold themselves out as public servants. They work for us. Now, would you hire any of these people? Would you fire them for doing this? Yes, you would, of course. These are people, and John Layfield is right, they're out of control. They don't have the slightest idea what they're doing. They've never met a payroll in their life. They spend money like crazy people. They couldn't even find $79 billion. $79 billion, that's a staggering number that they misspent in Medicare in the last few years. It's insane.
But
we got to get rid of them. These are people you got to get out.
But Steve, here's the thing. He's bringing up midterm elections next year. What is the economy going to look like after all this spending when these guys go up in midterm elections next year?
Well, I predicted that that the job situation is going to be much better, particularly by August of this year.
I remember that bet with Wayne. How you doing on that one? Not so well so far. Let's just remember.
Well, I'm pretty hopeful. Everybody's saying the job market's supposed to come back in the beginning of next year. But one point I want to go to.
You're going to have to cross-dress as Klinger. You realize this when you lose this bet to Wayne.
Yeah, my daughter Victoria was very upset that I made that bet.
There's your potential outfit.
But I did want to say that to Wayne and JB's point earlier about Congress people not ever meeting a payroll. It's funny because a lot of these folks get really good jobs in private industry when they leave public service. So obviously somebody thinks something of their abilities.
Here's the thing, Cheryl. To John's point earlier.
Go ahead, Tracy. Go ahead.
Well, just to John's point earlier, the securitization market is being propped up by the government. The housing market, Jonas, the housing market is being propped up by the government.
Bad, right?
Everything is being propped up. What happens when you pull it all away?
Yes.
What happens when the punch bowl is taken away? When the government stops buying securities? When we stop offering tax credits for housing, then what?
And I would argue that these guys get jobs as lobbyists once they leave Congress, which to me is not a real job. And just like Wayne says, they've never met a payroll, period. And to Jonas's point about the TARP, the government has made some money. By law,
as predicted by me.
By law, it had to go back to the deficit. By law, that is what they are extending conveniently to midterm elections for more stimulus. They're breaking the law to do this. They would be in jail, like Jonathan said, if they were in private enterprise.
Jonathan, real quick.
Right. Yeah, they've made money if you don't count the losses. Again, I mean, it's a fantasy. And Jonas, they are faking reality. It's bad to prop up a market with taxpayer dollars. We didn't do it with stocks in 2000. We shouldn't be doing it in housing in 2010.
All right, Wayne, I'm going to give you the last word, sir.
Well, all I was going to say about the housing thing is that the government doesn't prop up that. The government is not propping up anything. The government is just wasting money. They're spending. The private enterprises, the people who create jobs, most of the jobs in this country are created by small businesses. That's who does it, not the federal government, unless you're just going to hire the entire country. And I don't know who the hell's going to pay for that.
Well said, as we approach the holidays with all the language coming up. Living the high life on the taxpayer's dime while the country digs itself out of a